his farewell address.
Yep.
And yet Elise Jordan, at the end of it, when it turns to Donald Trump, suddenly that Mitch McConnell, that Republican Party of the last 40 years, disappears. And he becomes a sycophant for Donald Trump.
It's really incredible to imagine being an elected official in the United States of America in 2019 who is completely unwilling to just call out racism. And I can't imagine what I would say to my children and grandchildren 10, 20, 30 years from now about my silence, and that I wasn't part of the four, that I wasn't Justin Amash, that I wasn't part of the right side of history. It's really breathtaking, the short-sightedness of all these Republicans just to, you know, fall down and kneel at the altar of Trump rather than to the American values of liberty that we hold so dear.
You know, Mika, this has an impact.
Yeah.
It has an impact on not only what members of Congress do or don't do, but also on what members of the administration feel comfortable saying.
Yep.
What racists from the Daily Storm or what racists that may be at more mainstream news sites are able to say. And yesterday, and what really I think was extraordinarily revealing. I won't draw any parallels with any fascist countries. But what happened yesterday in a press gaggle has nothing to do with the United States of America and in any other administration.
Yeah.
Over the past 240 years, a person that did what Kellyanne Conway did yesterday would have been fired on the spot. By the time she left the press gaggle and went back into the White House, they would have already packed up her belongings and would told her, leave by the back door and never talk to us
Well, that's
again.
a good tee up. I mean, the fact is that she's done other things that would have caused this as well. That's why she doesn't come on this show. But this, at this point, is news. I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. But to the point that was being made about these Republicans, and also about what we heard in terms of coming back at the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi for being, quote, racist. It's really important as we cover these spineless Republicans who at this moment in history are incapable of calling out clear and present racism. You know, and it is a big story that they can't do that. This will be remembered. As Joe Biden said in the interview the other day, this is damaging for our country. But to the young freshmen who are really important to the Democratic caucus, who are making waves and also becoming a target of this president, and we want them to succeed. It's important what you say as well. Don't play into these Republicans' hands. That low blow to Nancy Pelosi, saying that she was, you know, had racist overtones when she was talking about their press stuff, whatever. That was a low blow. That was day trading, and it's being used against you. Don't trip over yourself. Doing a great job, but you gotta not try and work on trending. Don't day trade. Don't make yourself the story, and don't play into these very weak, spineless Republicans who will do anything to get you. Don't give them ammunition against Nancy Pelosi. You know where she stands. You know where she stands on these issues. You know she's not a racist. To what Joe was referring to, during a press gaggle yesterday morning, White House counselor Kellyanne Conway responded to the president's tweets, telling 4 congresswomen to go back to where they came from by asking a reporter about his own heritage.
If the president was not telling these 4 congresswomen to return to their supposed countries of origin, to which countries was he referring?
What's your ethnicity?
Why is that relevant to this?
No, because I'm asking you a question. My ancestors are from Ireland and Italy.
My own ethnicity is not relevant to the question I'm asking.
No, it is, because you're asking about, he said originally. He said originally from.
She's asking, Mika, a Jewish reporter, who she knows is a Jewish reporter. She's asking a Jewish reporter what his ethnicity is about. Now, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that this is Germany 1934, 1935. I'm not saying this is Italy 1930, 1931. But I would love for the administration to tell me when the hell that's ever happened coming out of the White House in the United States of America, because I don't think it ever has.
Conway later tweeted that she meant no disrespect when she asked the reporter about his ethnicity. She wrote, quote, "We are all from somewhere else originally. I asked the question to answer the question and volunteered my own ethnicity, Italian and Irish. Like many, I'm proud of my ethnicity, love the USA, grateful to God to be American." Earlier in the day, Conway spoke about who those 4 congresswomen represented.
They represent a dark underbelly in this country of people who are not respecting our troops, are not giving them the resources and the respect that they deserve.
So, Mike Barnicle, I really don't know where to begin.
Dark underbelly?
Donald Trump makes racist comments about 4 women that are women of color, and she accuses them of being dark, the dark underbelly of America. And then she asks a Jewish reporter, demands really of a Jewish reporter, for him to tell her his ethnicity. Please tell me, Mike, when has that ever happened in the United States of America before in a White House briefing?
Well, it has never happened before, Joe, and you're right. What you said prior to this, she would have been fired on the spot before she got back to her desk in the West Wing. She would have been fired. Anyone would be fired, but not in this administration. You also referenced a couple of minutes ago that perhaps what we're enduring right now as a nation is a defining moment for this administration. We have multiple defining moments each and every week for this administration. You also mentioned earlier Ronald Reagan's farewell speech, which I happened to have read yesterday again. And he gave it on January 19th, 1989, at a Medal of Freedom ceremony in the White House, in the West Wing. And he awarded the Medal of Freedom to 1 Democrat and 1 Republican, Mike Mansfield, who fought in World War I in the Navy, and George Shultz, former Secretary of State in multiple other positions, who fought in World War II in the Marine Corps. And it's a node to immigration and what immigration does to provide more strength and resilience to this country. In part, here's what he said. "Since this is the last speech that I will give as president, I think it's fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago when a man wrote me and said, 'You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American.'" Republicans ought to reread that speech. January 19th, 1989, Ronald Reagan. Everyone ought to reread that speech.
A man they all claim to admire and hold up as a hero. They should read that. Let's compare what Kellyanne said yesterday to the op-ed written by her husband, George Conway, in the Washington Post. The headline, "Trump is a racist president." Conway writes this: "President Trump was boorish, dim-witted, inarticulate, incoherent, narcissistic, and insensitive. He's a pathetic bully, but an equal opportunity bully in his uniquely crass and crude manner. He'll attack anyone he thinks is critical of him. No matter how much I found him ultimately unfit, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt about being a racist. No matter how much I came to dislike him, I didn't want to think that the President of the United States is a racial bigot, but Sunday left no doubt. Naivete, resentment, and outright racism roiled in a toxic mix have given us a racist president. Trump could have used vile slurs, including the vilest of them all, and the intent and effect would have been no less clear. What's just as bad, though, is the virtual silence from Republican leaders and office holders. They're so because knowing how vindictive, stubborn, and obtusely self-destructive Trump is, they fear his wrath. But none of that is good enough. What's at stake